The funeral director was holding a blue envelope when my stepmother told me to leave the front row. We were 10 minutes from the service. My father's walnut casket rested beneath the stained glass windows of Bellwether Funeral Home, surrounded by white lilies that smelled too sweet for February. His silver watch, the one he had worn every day for 32 years, sat inside the open lid beside his folded hands. I had just placed my fingertips against the polished wood when Denise stepped between us. "That section is for family, Claire," she said quietly. Her tone was careful, almost kind. That made it worse. I looked at the reserved cards lining the first pew. Denise's name was printed beside those of her sons, Trevor and Mason. Even Trevor's girlfriend had a seat. Mine had been removed. "I'm his daughter," I said. Denise smoothed the sleeve of her black dress. "You haven't acted like one for a long time. Let's not create a scene today." Behind her, Trevor stared at the carpet. Mason adjusted his tie as though the knot required his full attention. Then Denise said the words she must have rehearsed. "You're not really family anymore." The funeral director, Mr. Alden, stopped beside us. He was a narrow man with silver hair and the patient posture of someone accustomed to grief making people unreasonable. In his hand was a sealed file marked, "To be opened before the service. Claire present." Denise saw my name. For the first time that morning, the confidence left her face. Alden looked from her to me. "Mrs. Harper, your husband gave very specific instructions regarding this file." Denise reached toward it. "I'm his wife. Give it to me." He moved the envelope behind his folder. He specifically instructed me not to. The chapel seemed to go still around us. If you have ever been pushed outside your own family while everyone pretended it was reasonable, stay with me. You already know that exclusion rarely begins at the funeral. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 51 when my father died, old enough to recognize manipulation and still foolish enough to hope death might make people honest. Dad had called me 3 nights before his final stroke. I missed him. I was standing in the pharmacy where I worked as an operations manager, trying to resolve an insurance audit while sleet tapped against the windows. His voicemail was only 11 seconds long. "Claire, it's Dad. I fixed what I should fixed years ago. Call me when you can." I called at 8:17 that evening. Denise answered his phone. "He's sleeping," she said. "Stop upsetting him." By morning, he was in intensive care. Denise refused to add my name to the approved visitors list. She told the nurses we were estranged. We were complicated. We were not estranged. Dad and I had eaten lunch together 19 days earlier at a diner off Route 6. He ordered meatloaf, complained about the gravy, and slid a small brass key across the table. "Keep this somewhere Denise can't find it," he said. I asked what it opened. He folded my fingers around it. "Something I should have told you about a long time ago." The key was now in the zippered pocket of my purse. Mr. Alden gestured toward his private office. "Miss Bennett, I need you to come with me." Denise stepped in front of the door. "No," she said. "Whatever is in that file concerns my husband's family, mister." Alden studied her for a moment, then broke the seal. The first page carried my father's signature, and beneath it was a date from 6 years earlier. The exact week Denise had convinced everyone that Dad no longer wanted me around. 6 years earlier, Denise had not yet learned to call me an outsider. Back then, she called me whenever something needed fixing. Dad married her when I was 38. My mother had been dead for 11 years, and I wanted to believe his second marriage meant he had found companionship rather than replacement. Denise arrived with 2 grown sons, a talent for making requests sound like compliments, and a private belief that useful people should be grateful for the privilege of being needed. "You're so organized, Claire," she would say before handing me a stack of insurance forms. "You understand your father better than anyone." Usually meant she wanted me to persuade him to cancel a fishing trip, change a prescription, or loan Trevor money. At family dinners, I was the one who brought Dad's low-sodium meal because Denise forgot his cardiologist's instructions. I kept a spare key to their house, tracked his appointments in a paper calendar, and called every Sunday at 7. Dad appreciated what I did, but appreciation is not the same as protection. He had spent most of his life avoiding conflict. When Denise corrected him, he rubbed the side of his thumb against his wedding band. When she interrupted me, he studied his plate. Silence was his method of keeping peace. Even when someone else had to pay for it, I had learned the same habit from him. When I was 12, Dad forgot to pick me up after a school concert because he had taken an extra shift at the machine shop. I waited beneath the yellow entrance light until the custodian called him. Dad arrived 40 minutes later with a paper cup of cocoa. "You know I'm doing all this for us," he said. I apologized for making him feel guilty. That became our pattern. He disappointed me. I explained it for him. After Denise entered the family, I worked harder to prove I was not jealous. I hosted Thanksgiving when she said their kitchen was too small. I helped Mason prepare for a warehouse supervisor interview. I lent Trevor $4,800 after his transmission failed, though he repaid only $600. The first Christmas after their wedding, Denise gave her sons engraved watches. She gave me a set of dish towels. Dad noticed. He lifted one towel from the box and said, "These are nice." I smiled because correcting the imbalance would have embarrassed him. That was the role I had accepted, the woman who kept everyone comfortable by pretending she required very little. Then Dad had bypass surgery. For 7 weeks, I drove 52 miles each way after work to manage his medications and meals. Denise said hospitals made her anxious. Trevor was swamped. Mason had children. I had obligations too, but mine were treated as flexible. Every evening, I left a covered plate warming in their oven before driving home in the dark. One night, Dad caught my wrist as I checked his blood pressure. "You do too much," he said. I waited for him to tell the others to do more. Instead, he whispered, "I don't know what we'd do without you." At the time, I heard love. Years later, I understood it was also a warning. The line was crossed in September, 6 years before Dad's funeral. He had been home from cardiac rehabilitation for 3 months when Denise called me at work and asked me to come over. Her voice was unusually formal. "Your father has seen what you wrote," she said. I found them sitting at the kitchen table. Dad's medication organizer had been pushed aside, and a printed email lay between them. Denise's reading glasses rested on top of it as if she had been studying evidence. Dad would not look at me. The email appeared to be from my personal account. It was addressed to a senior living facility 40 minutes away and asked about memory care availability, property liquidation, and whether an adult child could initiate placement without a parent's consent. The final sentence read, "Once the house is sold, managing his remaining assets should be straightforward." I read it twice. "I didn't write this." Denise folded her hands. "It came from your address." "No, it has my name printed at the top. That isn't the same thing." Dad finally looked up. His face was gray with anger and humiliation. "You think I can't take care of myself?" "I have never said that. You brought me those power of attorney forms because the hospital social worker told us every cardiac patient should have them." Denise slid another paper toward me. It was a brochure from the same facility, one I had picked up for a pharmacy customer whose husband had dementia. She had found it in my car when she borrowed it the previous week. 2 unrelated objects had been arranged into a story, and Dad wanted the story because it gave his fear a name. Denise spoke gently. "Claire, nobody is accusing you of wanting him dead, but perhaps you've become too involved." I stared at her. That phrasing was deliberate, cruelty delivered as moderation. I asked Dad to let me open my email account on his computer. I could show him my sent folder, login history, anything he wanted. He rubbed his wedding band. "Denise says those things can be deleted, then call the facility." "We already did," she said. "They wouldn't discuss private inquiries. Of course they would not." Dad stood and removed my spare key from his pocket. He placed it beside the printed email. "I think we need some distance." The small brass key struck the counter with a sound sharper than it should have made. I waited for him to hesitate, to ask one more question. To remember the winter meals, the blood pressure logs, or the nights I had slept in a vinyl chair beside his hospital bed. He only said, "Please don't make this harder." So I picked up the key. Then I set it back down. "No," I said. "You're not going to describe this as me abandoning you. You are choosing to believe something about me without allowing me to prove otherwise." Denise's mouth tightened. Dad looked toward the window. That silence answered me. I removed his appointments from my calendar, wrote down the date, September 14, and left the house without apologizing. It was the first boundary I had ever set with my father. It also gave Denise exactly what she wanted. For 3 months, I tried to disprove an accusation nobody wanted disproved. I requested my email login history, wrote to the senior living facility, and paid $185 for a computer technician to examine my laptop. His report found no deleted messages, no unusual logins, and no connection between my account and the document Denise had shown Dad. The facility's administrator also confirmed in writing that it had never received an email from me. I mailed both letters to Dad by certified post. They were returned unopened. Across the envelope, Denise had written, "Refused, do not contact." That should have ended my efforts. Instead, I kept the printed copy she had given me and studied it during a quiet shift at the pharmacy. I managed insurance audits for a living. Most people saw paperwork as a collection of words. I saw spacing, timestamps, codes, and small inconsistencies that revealed where a record had traveled. At the bottom of the supposed email was a faint web address. It did not belong to my email provider. It belonged to a free online template service that allowed users to create realistic-looking email screenshots. The document had not been sent from my account. It had been manufactured. I printed the template site's instructions, highlighted the matching layout, and drove to Dad's house. Denise opened the door only 6 inches. "He doesn't want to see you." This email was fabricated. She glanced at the papers without taking them. "You've always been good at producing documents that support you." Behind her, I heard Dad cough. "Let me speak to him. He's resting." "Dad," I called through the opening. The email wasn't real. The hallway remained silent. Denise leaned closer. "You need to accept that he made his choice." Then she shut the door. 2 weeks later, I learned the false email had cost me more than access to my father. Dad removed me as his medical proxy. He changed the beneficiary on a $72,000 life insurance policy from me to Denise. He also signed a deed transferring his machine shop building into joint ownership with her. That building had been purchased during my parents' marriage. My mother had spent 15 years doing the bookkeeping without a salary, and Dad had always called it, "What your mother helped build for you." Now Denise would automatically own it when he died. I did not challenge the deed. Dad was competent, the property was his, and I had no legal right to force him to keep an old promise. Still, the timing clarified Denise's motive. She had not merely wanted distance between us. She wanted every future decision to happen without me in the room. The following spring, Dad mailed me a birthday card containing only his signature. No message, no return address. Tucked inside was a photograph of him standing outside the machine shop, his silver watch visible beneath his cuff. On the back, in his handwriting, were 6 words. "I may have made a mistake. I called immediately," Denise answered. And before I could mention the photograph, she said, "Whatever he sent you, throw it away." I did not throw the photograph away. I put it in the locked drawer of my desk, beside the returned envelope and the technician's report, and stopped trying to force open a door Dad had helped close. For the first few months, freedom felt less like relief than empty space. Sunday evenings were the hardest. At 7, my hand still reached toward my phone before I remembered there was no call to make. I worked late, accepted extra audits, and told myself exhaustion was evidence that I was moving forward. My colleague Marisol Vega saw through that. She was 60, recently divorced, and managed the pharmacy's compliance department with the blunt efficiency of someone who had stopped decorating the truth. "You're not rebuilding," she said one evening. "You're hiding where nobody can accuse you of leaving." I disliked her for almost a week. Then I asked her to help me apply for a regional operations position in Columbus. The promotion meant supervising 12 pharmacies, a salary increase of $18,000, and relocating nearly 2 hours from Dad's house. I had postponed applying twice because Denise always said Dad's health might decline. This time, I submitted the application. I did not get the job. The rejection arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 hours before Denise left a voicemail saying Dad had been hospitalized for an irregular heartbeat. "You don't need to come," she said. "I'm only informing you so you can't claim we kept it from you." I drove halfway to the hospital before pulling into a gas station. For 20 minutes, I sat beneath the fluorescent canopy with the photograph on the passenger seat. The old version of me wanted to arrive with clean clothes, medication lists, and a willingness to forgive everyone before they had acknowledged anything. Instead, I called the nurse's desk. They confirmed Dad was stable and scheduled for observation. Denise had again listed me as someone who should receive no information beyond that, so I turned around. It felt cruel. Marisol disagreed. "A boundary always feels cruel to the person who was trained to have none," she said. I reapplied for the next regional opening 3 months later. This time, I practiced the interview instead of assuming competence would speak for itself. Marisol interrupted every vague answer. "Stop saying we when you did the work," she told me. I was offered the position in November. The move cost me more than I expected. I sold my small house below asking price after an inspection uncovered foundation drainage problems. I rented an apartment with thin walls and spent my first Thanksgiving eating grocery store pie from a paper plate. Still, the new job gave me something my family never had: records that matched reality. When I solved a problem, my name stayed attached to it. When I made a mistake, nobody converted it into proof of my character. And when Dad called my office 18 months later, I finally understood why he had sent the photograph. He did not ask me to forgive him. He asked whether I still had the original. Dad's question unsettled me more than an apology would have. "Yes," I said. "I kept it." He exhaled into the phone. "Look at the bottom right corner." I pulled the photograph from my desk drawer. Beneath the image was a printed date, April 3, but on the back, beside his 6-word message, Dad had written April 17. "There are 2 dates," I said. "The first is when Denise thinks it was taken. The second is when I actually went to the shop." I waited. After the false email, Denise had begun controlling Dad's transportation, mail, and appointments under the explanation that stress was dangerous for his heart. She told him the machine shop had been leased to Trevor, who planned to reopen it as a fabrication business. But on April 17, Dad took a taxi there without telling her. The building was nearly empty. Several pieces of equipment had been sold. Trevor had used the property as collateral for a business loan, and Denise had signed paperwork claiming Dad had approved the arrangement. "I signed some forms," Dad admitted, "not the ones attached to that loan." His voice had become thinner since I last heard it, but the shame in it was unmistakable. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I found the email template site in Denise's browser history." I closed my eyes. For 6 years, I had imagined this moment. In every version, Dad understood immediately, apologized completely, and repaired what his silence had damaged. Reality arrived in fragments. He still defended her. He said Denise had grown up watching her mother lose a home after her stepfather died. Property made her feel safe, control made her feel prepared. She was afraid you'd take everything, he said. So she made sure I had nothing. He did not answer. Dad had begun meeting privately with an attorney and an accountant. He could not reverse every decision, especially the joint deed, but he was documenting the unauthorized equipment sales and separating the remaining assets from Denise's control. He wanted the original photograph because the taxi receipt, its actual date, and the empty shop image established when he discovered the missing machinery. I need you to bring it, he said. When? Not to the house. Bellwether Funeral Home. I thought I had misheard him. Dad explained that Mr. Alden, the funeral director, was an old customer from the machine shop years. He had agreed to store a sealed file because Denise never entered the funeral home except for arrangements involving someone else. You're planning your funeral? I'm planning for the possibility that she outlives my courage. The sentence hurt because it was honest. We arranged to meet Mr. Alden the following Saturday. Dad never arrived. Denise called that morning and said he had fallen in the bathroom. She accused me of pressuring him, then blocked my number. But I had already delivered the photograph, and now, standing inside Mr. Alden's office 6 years later, I watched him remove that same picture from my father's final file, along with a notarized statement Denise had never known existed. Mr. Alden did not read the notarized statement aloud immediately. He placed it face down on his desk and explained that Dad had revised his funeral instructions 8 months earlier. The file contained a personal statement, copies of business records, and directions for a private meeting after the service with Denise, Trevor, Mason, me, and Dad's attorney. Denise stood in the doorway with both hands gripping her handbag. "This is grotesque," she said. "Walter's lying in the next room, and Claire is turning his funeral into an investigation." I had not requested the meeting. I had not known the file existed. Still, everyone looked at me as though I had arranged the timing. Trevor entered behind his mother. "Can we please just get through today?" His voice was softer than I remembered. He had lost weight, and the confidence he once wore like an expensive jacket had been replaced by the strained politeness of someone living beside a financial collapse. Denise took a breath and changed tactics. "You can sit in the front row," she told me, beside me. 5 minutes earlier, I had been not really family. Now she was offering me the place I had wanted since childhood, visible proof that I belonged beside my father. The invitation tempted me more than I cared to admit, not because of Denise. Because Dad was inside that chapel, and some small unreasonable part of me still wanted our final public image to look like a family that had not failed each other. Mr. Alden opened the office door wider. Through it, I could see Dad's casket and the silver watch beside his hands. Denise lowered her voice. "We don't have to discuss those papers today. Sit with us. Let people see there was no bitterness. There it was, not peace. Appearance." Mason finally spoke. "Mom," Dad asked for the file to be opened. He was confused near the end. Mr. Alden's expression remained professional. Mr. Harper completed these instructions while his attorney and physician both considered him capable of making his own decisions. Denise's eyes moved to the document. "What does he say about—" For 1 second, she did not sound controlling. She sounded afraid. Dad had been her husband for 13 years. Whatever she had done, she had also cooked his breakfasts, slept beside his oxygen machine, and watched his body become less dependable. Her fear of losing property had always been tangled with a deeper fear of being left with nothing. Understanding that did not require me to protect her from the consequences. I removed the brass key from my purse and placed it beside Dad's statement. "I'll sit in the front," I said. "But not so people think there was no bitterness." Denise's shoulders relaxed too soon. "I'll sit there because he was my father." Then I looked at Mr. Alden, and after the service we opened everything. From the chapel, the organist began the first hymn. Denise picked up her handbag, but her hand was trembling now. She had offered me my old place in exchange for my old silence. For the first time, I understood they were not the same thing. The service lasted 43 minutes. I know because I watched the second-hand move around Dad's silver watch, while people described him as dependable, generous, and quietly devoted to family. All of those things were true. They were simply not the whole truth. Denise sat beside me, with her hands folded over a lace handkerchief. Trevor stared straight ahead. Mason cried without trying to hide it. After the final prayer, the visitors moved toward the reception room. Mr. Alden led us through a side hallway to a smaller consultation room where Dad's attorney, Elaine Mercer, was waiting with a gray document case. Elaine had represented Dad's machine shop for nearly 20 years. She greeted Denise politely but did not hug her. The brass key opened a narrow drawer built into the bottom of Dad's old metal tool chest, which Mr. Alden had stored at Dad's request. Inside were 3 objects: the original photograph, a handwritten equipment ledger, and the silver watch box Dad had kept since my mother gave him the watch on their 15th anniversary. Trevor went pale when he saw the ledger. Denise looked at him. "What?" He rubbed both palms against his trousers. "Mom, I told you we should have replaced that." "Replaced what?" Mason asked. Elaine removed a folder from her case. The handwritten ledger listed every major machine Dad had owned, including serial numbers, purchase prices, and maintenance dates. I recognized his neat block printing from childhood evenings when I sat in the office doing homework while he balanced invoices. Besides 7 pieces of equipment, Dad had later written the names of auction companies and sale dates. The proceeds totaled $186,400. Only $41,000 had entered the business account. Trevor leaned forward. I used the difference to keep the fabrication company operating. You used Dad's property, Mason said. It was supposed to become ours eventually. Denise spoke without looking at anyone. Walter knew Trevor needed help. Elaine slid a copy of the loan application across the table. Walter stated that this signature was not his. Denise's face tightened. He signed dozens of papers. His memory was unreliable. That argument is addressed in his statement, Elaine replied. For the first time, Denise looked directly at me. You know what it's like to watch someone decline, she said. Every bill frightened him. Every decision became an accusation. I was trying to hold the house together. I believed part of her. Fear had built the room we were sitting in. Denise feared poverty. Trevor feared failure. Dad feared confrontation. And I had feared that presenting enough evidence might finally make someone choose me. Elaine opened the blue envelope. Before she could read, Denise reached for Dad's watchbox. The lid slipped from her fingers. Inside was a folded note addressed in Dad's handwriting to all 4 of us. Elaine unfolded it carefully. Denise whispered, "Please don't." But the funeral director closed the consultation room door. There was no longer anywhere for the truth to leave. Elaine read Dad's note in the same steady voice she used for contracts. Claire, I believed a lie because it protected me from admitting I had surrendered my judgment. Denise, you created that lie. Trevor, you benefited from it. I allowed all 3 of you to live with the consequences while I avoided the discomfort of correcting them. Trevor shifted in his chair. Denise stared at the watchbox. Dad's statement explained that after finding the template site on Denise's computer, he had asked an independent forensic technician to examine it. The report showed that the false email had been created on her laptop 3 days before she presented it to him. Denise shook her head. That computer was used by everyone. Elaine placed a receipt beside the report. The template service had charged $12.99 to Denise's personal credit card. Mason's made a low sound and pushed his chair away from the table. Mom? Denise folded the lace handkerchief into smaller and smaller squares. I was protecting Walter from his daughter, Mason asked. From losing the property his first wife's family always believed belonged to them. I felt the old impulse to defend my mother, to explain that she had worked without pay and died believing the shop would someday support me. But I no longer needed Denise to agree with the facts for them to remain true, Elaine continued. Dad's revised estate plan could not remove Denise from the jointly owned building, but his remaining share in the business, his retirement account, and the recovered auction proceeds had been placed in a trust. After taxes and legal expenses, the trust held approximately $214,000. Half would go to me. The other half would fund repayment claims against Trevor's company and cover any unresolved business debts. Mason would receive Dad's personal savings and tools because, as Dad wrote, he was the only one who refused money he had not earned. Trevor stood. You can't do this at his funeral. I'm not doing anything, I said. Dad did. He looked at Denise. You told me the paperwork was handled. She snapped. Sit down. He did not. Elaine then read the final paragraph. Dad had instructed her to provide the forged loan documents to the lender and to pursue civil recovery if Trevor refused a repayment agreement. No dramatic arrest followed. No one arrived in handcuffs. There would be months of accountants, negotiations, and consequences measured in payment schedules rather than public spectacle. Denise finally faced me. You got what you wanted. I took the brass key from the table. No, I wanted my father to believe me when I was standing in his kitchen. The room became silent. This file cannot give me those 6 years back. It can only stop you from rewriting them. Denise's face hardened again. After everything I did for him, he chose you. I looked at Dad's silver watch box between us. He didn't choose me soon enough, I said. He finally chose the truth. I signed the acknowledgement Elaine placed before me, then slid the blue envelope back across the table. Denise had called me not really family, because she believed belonging was something she could assign like a seat in a chapel. But Dad's last file had exposed the flaw in that power. She could remove my name from a card. She could not remove it from what had happened. The consequences arrived slowly, which made them more believable. Trevor's lender froze the fabrication company's credit line within 3 weeks. He denied knowingly using a forged signature, but the equipment records and auction transfers left little room for argument. After 11 months of mediation, he agreed to sell the remaining machinery and repay the trust over 7 years. His company survived in a smaller rented workshop. For the first time, it had to operate without my father's property holding it up. Mason stopped speaking to Denise for almost 6 months. When they resumed contact, it was limited to Sunday phone calls and occasional lunches in public places. He told her he would not discuss the estate, defend Trevor, or carry messages to me. Denise kept her half of the machine shop building, but she could not afford its taxes and maintenance alone. Eventually, she agreed to sell it. The proceeds gave her enough to remain secure, though not enough to control everyone around her with promises of inheritance. She wrote to me twice. The first letter explained her childhood, her mother's eviction, and the panic she felt whenever property belonged to someone else. It contained no apology. I did not answer. The second letter arrived 4 months later. It said only, "I should not have made you prove you were his daughter." I kept the letter, but I did not mistake recognition for repair. Elaine gave me Dad's silver watch after the estate meeting. He had left instructions that it should go to me, along with the blue envelope and the old brass key. The watch had stopped at 6:42, the time listed on his death certificate. For weeks, I considered having it repaired. Then I placed it inside its box beside the photograph. I did not need it to keep moving in order to prove that time had passed. My share of the trust did not transform my life. After fees and taxes, I used part of it to pay off my mortgage and placed the rest into retirement savings. I continued working, though I stopped volunteering for every crisis simply because I knew how to solve it. Marisol noticed first. "You're learning to leave some plates cold," she said. She was right. Mason and I developed a cautious friendship separate from the roles our parents had assigned us. On the first anniversary of Dad's death, we met at the diner off Route 6. He ordered meatloaf. I warned him about the gravy. We laughed harder than the joke deserved. Before leaving, I placed the brass key on the table between us. It no longer opened Dad's house or the hidden drawer in his tool chest. Still, I kept it. Once, it had represented access someone else could revoke. Now it reminded me that the most important door I opened was the one leading out of a life where usefulness was the price of belonging. My father's final file corrected the record, but it did not heal every absence. Healing began when I stopped waiting for a family seat and built a life in which nobody could remove my name. Some families are held together by blood. Others become honest only when one person refuses to keep carrying the lie. If you have ever had to choose truth over a place at someone else's table, share what helped you make that decision, and subscribe for more stories about the quiet courage it takes to stop being erased.